You're watching Backstreet Gossip, news talk, current events, and political commentary with your host, Ron Ludders. Now, let's return to the show.
Gosh, I'm glad we still have an audience here to applaud. This is wonderful.
Well, they love Jan.
They love Jan.
It was really nice to have Jan on here. LD23.
She's so outgoing. It's amazing. It's just,
and the knowledge that she has with regard to healthcare and been
she'll make a good senator. Yeah. At any rate, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Hub Radio Phoenix.
And look who's here.
Who's here?
Hey.
Peter Martin is here.
Oh, Martin Peters.
Martin Peter, yes.
Okay.
Hey, everybody.
And we have on the line, we have Jenni Taylor. Is that right?
Jenni, can you hear us okay?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay,
Awesome.
Speak up a little bit. Or could you pot that up a little bit? Did I say your name? Does it not have an L in it?
It does have an L in it, yeah. It's
Okay,
Taylor.
Okay, well,
So Taylor.
David sent that to me. The L was
Typo.
missing.
Oh.
And,
It's Taylor, just old-fashioned Taylor, yep.
At any rate, we have a town in Arizona named Taylor.
Oh,
actually.
very nice.
Yeah, and it's right between nosebleed and belly button.
Well, even better.
We have
Even
some
better.
crazy names for towns around here.
No
How
kidding.
about Nothing, Arizona?
Nothing, yeah. Any rate,
Wow.
she's a Wild West gal too. She's from Utah. Of course, they're not as wild as we are down here.
No.
And so I'm going to put the L by your name. Okay.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
She's up in Utah. What part of Utah are you from?
I am from North Ogden, about 45 minutes north of Salt Lake City.
I know where that is. That's a nice. I love that town.
Didn't they have an IRS there? I remember mailing
do.
We
things
have a
to
big
Ogden.
IRS campus,
Yeah,
yep.
Ogden.
Where I send
Ogden
all. That's
City.
where I send all my money to you guys.
All the money. Keep sending it. Keep sending it.
Any rate, she is here because of David Kyle, who's a correspondent of ours, and she went. This is sad. Today is a very sad day for me because we had lost 13 of our young people to the Taliban, and one of them happened to be from Salt Lake City. Thank God we didn't suffer any losses here, but my heart goes out to all those families that these young men and women were trying to help people. I find it the most disgusting thing in the world to take people that are trying to assist other people with their lives, and somebody would dare attack them. So yesterday, I guess one of the young men returned to Utah. Is that correct?
His remains were returned to Dover Air Base yesterday, but his family joined our community for a vigil that we held last night here in Utah.
Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about that? I'm really appalled at the way this, and I don't want to get you involved in the politics, but this president has done nothing to preserve the peace and tranquility of the American people and people that are citizens abroad. And I really have a deep feeling for what's going on. So tell us what the mood was like there. I know it could not be a celebratory event, but...
I appreciate you asking. It was a really interesting mood. Obviously, grief, sorrow, that heartache and devastation. But it was also a really beautiful event. Celebratory would be the wrong word. Like you said, you would not say we're celebrating the fact that this young man lost his life in Afghanistan. But we were honoring the life that he lived and the service that he gave. We were also joined by hundreds of other military members and veterans that gathered with us, and we were celebrating them. We read through the names of all of the Marine, sailor, and soldier that were killed last week in those attacks together, all 13. There were songs sung. We pledged allegiance. We had hundreds of flags held by people in the audience. And so I wouldn't use the word celebrate, but it was a very reverent and inspiring event. I know. Whose first name, I'm sorry?
Director producer here is asking Jenni, Genni. E.
Yeah, it's
Taylor.
Jennie. Yep.
He's going to put it on the screen.
Oh, perfect.
We didn't
Yeah.
have that. David just got that information, as I
Yeah.
explained it just as we were going
So
on.
Yeah,
Jenny,
perfect.
Jenny,
Yeah.
did you have any relationship with the people there, or are you just reporting this, or tell us where
So
you fit in?
really interesting that you would ask. About 6:35 p.m. Friday night, I got a text message from a friend asking me if she could connect me with another friend who was a close family friend of Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover's. And I said, absolutely. I'm, happy to talk to them or whatever I could do. She called and we spoke for a brief minute on the phone. They expressed an interest in having a vigil or gathering with neighbors and extended family, and they just weren't sure what to do and asked if I might help and if I thought the community would come and would show up and support. And I said, absolutely. What can I do? What can we do? The entire community's here for you. And in about 48 hours, it went from a really vague idea to one of the most beautiful patriotic ceremonies I have seen in my lifetime.
Wow.
We gathered with our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, state auditor, state treasurer, every elected official on a state level. We had our entire federal delegation, both of our senators, all four of our congressmen were there. Like I mentioned, hundreds of veterans and service members still in uniform, families there with their children wanting to pay their respects and help their children see what this really is all about. The Patriot Guard Riders, of course, they were there. They're always there with their strong presence and making sure anyone who wanted to make it political was kept at bay. There's plenty of time for politics and debating this. You and I agree on that. We're going to be analyzing this for a long time to come, and this is a mess. But last night, we focused on the life of this young man. We had four brief speakers who were close family members and friends that spoke of who he was, of the life he lived, of the things that kind of made him tick, the service he rendered. You really just fell in love with this young man, this young Marine. One of his cousins spoke, and she said, "In our family, we love deeply." And I was acting as the MC of the event, and I said, "You've helped us all love deeply this young man.
Mm-hmm.
He's no longer just a name on a screen or a picture in a uniform listed as KIA. We really got to see that personal side." Like I said, we had hundreds of flags being held by people. We had hundreds of battery-operated candles. We're in the middle of a drought. We're dry like you guys, so we didn't have any actual open flame, but we did have candles that we honored a moment of silence and held them to the sky. Our governor spoke and shared some great remarks about how obviously there's a lot wrong in the world. There's a lot wrong in America. There's a lot wrong in the neighborhood down the street. But right here for right now, we can come together. Right here for right now, we can lift each other. We can serve, we can honor, and we can make sure that these brave men and women in uniform throughout the ages haven't given their lives in vain. You'll never convince me that a man or woman in uniform's life was wasted in service, no matter the politics of the war. You will never convince me it's a waste. I think it's up to us to make sure it's not lost. The meaning's not lost. The purpose isn't lost. The value isn't lost. That's on us.
Well, Abraham Lincoln said it
I was
best.
just going to say, Abraham Lincoln, it's for us, the living, to decide now, how do we make this worth it? And of course, it will never be worth it to his family to have him gone so young. His fiance was there, and I just had a perfect view of her as she sat on the front row of the audience, and I sat on the front row of the program. And my heart just broke. They're young. They're about to begin their lives together. The future was bright for them. They're these great young people, this rising generation of America's finest, taken far too soon. And over, their family members and friends just kept telling all of us, we just don't want him to be forgotten. Please don't forget him. Please don't forget my brother. Please don't forget my son. Please don't forget my cousin or my nephew. And I will tell you, last night we gathered as a group of people in the state of Utah with a really large flag at half-mast that we stood for, and we said, we will never forget. We promise you we will never forget. We will honor him. We will honor you. We will honor the thousands like that young man. And so when you ask what was the mood, of course the mood was grief-stricken. I say we were there to share in our sorrow, but we were also there to express our gratitude. And it was both. It was very sorrowful and very grateful. And I, for one, left feeling almost invigorated, motivated to do something with my own life, motivated to make something of the freedoms I've been blessed with in my own life here in the United States. And it really, as much as it's, a somber heartache, and it caused me to revisit a lot of personal emotions. And as I picture them going to Dover, I'm remembering myself being in Dover, and I'm walking back through the anguish of all of that in a very personal, raw way. I also left feeling uplifted and inspired, and probably more committed than ever to make sure I'm doing my part, that these young men, these young women, old or young, it doesn't matter, this war or a war 100 years ago, I will not waste their lives. I will not lose track of what they served and bled and died for. I will make sure my children know that, and I will do everything I can to honor them by living a life of honor.
Well, God bless you for that. I'm going to bend a little bit over towards the political side here. I'm astonished that we could have put ourselves in that kind of jeopardy. And one of the things, just as we finished off the first segment of the show, I got a text. I didn't mention it to you, gentlemen, and Jenny, from one of our dear listeners, and he said, and this just astonished me, that 15 times during did you watch the aircraft the bodies being removed from the aircraft and put in the? No. Well, I did. I watched it all, and I felt that's the least I could do. And the president looked at his watch 15 times during that ceremony. It's almost like, come on, hurry up! I've got places to go.
How long was the ceremony?
Oh, it must have been about 45 minutes. Now, I'm sure that they don't like standing out on the tarmac, and it's a sad occasion.
No, but that's the duty.
But that's part of your responsibility as president. That
So,
people
Ron,
give their lives up for your country.
Ron, it's my understanding that the oldest of these service members, was 31. Jenny, what was the age of that?
He was 31. He was the they referred to him as kind of the the elder of the group. They described him as having been, and him I mean of course Taylor Hoover, Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover, as being the leader, the senior of those Marines that was helping to rally the troops and execute the orders. He was kind of the the guy in charge for that Abbey Gate. And if you think of that, he being 31 is the old man of the group. All of us, of course, are far older than that. And just how heartbreaking it is to think that 31 was the oldest.
Wow.
And I think they reported, at least last night in our vigil, one of the speakers reported that the average age was about 22. These are young Marines.
And to be 22 when you have a 31, that means a lot of more 20.
That means everybody's 18 or 19. Exactly.
So, Ron, you had mentioned 15 times he looked at his watch, but there was something else that normally all the presidents of the United States do.
Yes, and that's the other thing. Having been in the military, he did something that I could not believe. I don't know if you noticed it, Jenny, if you saw that. The president is the commander-in-chief of the military, and you salute. You don't put your hand over your heart. Everybody that's been served is allowed now to put their hand or salute, but I don't believe that's appropriate if you're not in uniform. But when you are the commander-in-chief, you should salute. You should stand at attention and give a proper salute. And like I said, I'm devastated. I did not know a single one of these people, but I lived through the Vietnam War, and it was a terrible thing, absolutely terrible that people died. And when most of us, when we got back, people spit all over you. And I used to remember saying, "Don't blame me. I didn't start the war. I mean, I'm just serving my country."
Yeah. No, it's tragic when you look back and you see what was planned and a proper implementation of an exit strategy, and then you see what actually happened, and then the excuses for why they happened, and the people that have been put in harm's way specifically because of the bad decisions that were made. It's really hard to process all of this in a week or less.
And Ray and Peter, please chime in if you wish. When I've watched the videos going on, the ladies that were Marines were cuddling little babies. I've even seen men cuddling little babies and lifting babies over the fence because the parents were not even allowed to leave, and they were giving up their children, of all things. This is almost biblical. And when you see this type of thing, you say, I mean, it just tears your heartstrings apart. And these, I saw people attending to people that had either passed out or been beaten up by the Taliban Marines that were bringing them water, and they were true servants. They weren't warriors at that point. They were true servants of God, and they were doing the responsibility of being a human being, that the responsibilities we all have for each other. And then what hurts me is then there's these cretins, if you will, to think they can destroy that bondship between nations and between people. And if you study the scriptures, and I know you do, you think, haven't we come any further than the 3rd century?
Peter, Ron's making this incredible point, but the thing is that for the last 18 or so months, there has not been one of our servicemen that have died over 18 months. So they were there not to go out and to be fighting. They weren't in an offensive type of position, if that's correct to say. They were there to serve, exactly what you're saying. But it reverted in such a very short time to where we now had to defend not only ourselves but the Afghan people. But it was under control for 18 months.
And it's because the order of the withdrawal was completely screwed up. You can't take the military personnel out first. That just doesn't work.
But it was planned in a much, much different way. And Jenni,
well, President Trump had a plan, but it appears that it was rushed because of politics, and they wanted everybody out by the 20th anniversary of 9/11. And they wanted last troops out before that date.
Jenni, we thank you so much because, you stepped up to the plate. You emceed this event, an amazing event from what you're explaining to us. But, a lot of this, it didn't need to happen this way. And it seems as though everybody's passing the buck and saying, well, it's the only way that we should have. Everybody wanted everybody out, and this wasn't good, and it's going on too long. And there has to be a much better way to plan this so that tragedies like this just don't happen. This shouldn't have happened.
You still there, Jenni? Maybe we lost her. But anyway.
No, I'm still here.
Oh,
no,
okay.
I'm still here. Sorry. I would say, absolutely. I think we all can sit back and say, wow, this didn't have to happen this way. And how did it possibly go this badly? And we're all just torn over that. I had a conversation with a friend today who talked about the phrase, what if? We ask, what if this, what if that? And I think there's an appropriate time and place. We've got to ask what if, not necessarily to point fingers forever, but to make sure we don't keep repeating the same mistakes. We've got to go through those scenarios in our mind and in our analysis and after action review. But as individual American people, I would encourage us, instead of just asking what if we focus on now because of how sad this is that these men have died, how are we going to live? Because of the mistakes we've made in our country, what can we learn moving forward? Because of what we feel wasn't executed well, how can we change who we elect into office? One thing to keep in mind is the fact that most of our politically elected officials and policymakers have never even been to boot camp, let alone to war. And we've been at war for 20 years, but we've also been in Germany for 80. So I'm not sure that's the full argument. But my point is, we've got people making these very difficult, complex, important decisions and calls. And most of the politicos making these decisions have never been the one in combat uniform. They've never been the one that's over in that humanitarian crisis where, yeah, you've been trained to kill and defend at all costs, but your heart also goes out to the young baby that's sitting there crying, because even if you're a soldier or a Marine or whatever, you still have a soul and you still have that humanity. So I will tell you, I hope that because of this awful last couple of weeks, more of our veterans and service members from this generation will decide to get into political office and policy making, that because of everything we can't stand about what we have seen and heard for the last couple of weeks, we will be, as American people, more alert, more aware. Most of the time when a soldier or Marine or another service member has died in a war, particularly this war in the Iraq war, none of us had any idea what was going on until we heard the casualty count. We'd get the news, we'd see the headline, we'd feel so heartbroken because somebody died today. But really 10 minutes ago, we weren't thinking. We were at the grocery store or the baseball game or wondering what's on TV. And this was different, because for the last 2 weeks or so, every one of us has been riveted, almost watching it minute by minute. So when we heard there was a threat of an explosion, when we heard there was an explosion, when we heard these men had died, we'd almost been watching it happen. And that's very different from the day my husband died, from the day thousands of others died when none of us knew until it happened. That's why this is so etched in our souls, because we've actually paid attention the last couple of weeks. I hope as American people, we keep our eyes open. We hang on to the energy, because unfortunately we have in this country a lot of apathy. And, I don't hope we all get angry and riot in the streets. That won't do us any good. But I do hope we take our energy and turn it into action. And I am personally hoping that more and more of our veteran and military members will decide to get into political office and policy making. And I say that as the background of someone who was married to a political military member. My husband was a mayor and a major in the Utah National Guard. And I think his military experience helped him in his political capacity, and his political capacity made him a better leader in the Army. And we have a disconnect in today's politics and military. They don't overlap enough, in my opinion, and I hope that changes.
Well, many of us grew up in a day and age where military was required.
Absolutely.
Drafts and that. and I think they said even in the height of World War II that only 23% of America served in a capacity of a military personnel. Yeah. But more so, I remember listening to my mom and having these victory stamps and victory gardens, and food was sugar and so forth was rationed.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And you had ration coupons and so forth. And so I think people tended to think more in terms of uniting for a cause.
Hey, gentlemen, I'm going to tell you, I gave a TED Talk on this last year before all of this unfolded, but I think it rings true more now than ever, talking about what you just mentioned. Even if only 23% of the World War II generation wore a uniform, 100% of them knew someone who did.
Yes.
And that's very different today, because today that number is 1% wear a uniform. Yeah. 18% of Congress has ever worn a uniform for even 5 minutes.
Jenni, we're going to have to go. The music's playing.
Right. Jenni,
and,
where can we see that TED Talk? Jenni, where can we see that?
YouTube, just search my name, Jenni Taylor. It's called The Price of Freedom. Is it worth it?
Okay, we'll check that out. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Another time.
I will. I've got your
Jenni.
number here.
Thanks,
You're
Jenni.
listening to Hub Radio Phoenix, and we will see you Wednesday night on Fighting Back.
Thank you, Peter Martin.
Hey,
and
always
Peter
a pleasure.
Martin.
Wonderful to be here.
And
Thanks, you
his
guys.
twin brother, Martin Peters.
Martin Peters.